Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Megan, and today I'm going to be discussing the new TV series on Amazon Prime called We Were Liars. It is based on a book that I read a few summers back. So I'm going to be talking about the TV series as well as the book and the similarities and differences that I noticed. I finished the series yesterday and I was a little surprised on how boring the TV series was. Considering it was a psychological thriller, I thought it would have a little bit more of a sinister vibe, similar to the TV show Cruel Summer that came out a few years ago that Jessica Biel produced, but it didn't have that vibe at all. But if it did, I think that would have made it better. The pacing of the TV series was also a little bit slow. Considering the book is short, it's only about 220 pages, I think it would have been better if it was set up in probably a 2-hour movie. I don't think an 8-hour series would have been the best route for the book because the book is chaotic and kind of fast-paced in terms of going from the past to the present. They also covered a lot more years in the book than they do in the TV series. So I think that's one of the hits on it, is that they extended this type of book out when it didn't need to be extended. And I think it would have been better, as I will say this one time, for a book that I did read, I think it would have been better as probably a 2-hour movie versus an 8-hour miniseries. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the differences that I saw in the TV series and the book, because the book is structured very uniquely, and I think that they could have played into that uniqueness in terms of putting it on screen. I think they added so much fluff that didn't need to be there. I think because the prequel is the second book in the series where it covers the aunt's childhood on the island, I'm thinking maybe that is why they shown a lot of extra stuff that's not even in the book. Maybe they wanted to give you a foundation. Maybe if they get picked up for a season 2, knowing that the season 2 is going to be the prequel, if they kind of set a foundation of how the aunt's dynamic is, maybe it would be easier for audiences to follow. But in the book, you don't necessarily know too much about the aunt and the grandfather, and I think that's kind of the beauty of it, because it focuses just on the 4 teens, and then the siblings of the teens are also in the book. They're more in the book, I think, than they are in the TV series. So I have a list of the few differences that I saw, so I'm just gonna see if I can run through them really quickly. I will say, after the storm episode, I skimmed through episodes 6 and 7 because there were some wish list scenes that I was hoping that would be there and they weren't there, so I may miss some things along the way. Because of those, I tried to skip through like the funeral because that's not in the book. It's talked about, but there's not necessarily a big scene, and so I think that's one of the things that they did, is that they took some things that were probably mentioned in the book and they expanded them out, which I don't think they needed to. So in the book, year 15 is actually the year, or summer 15 is actually the year the accident happens. And so in the TV series, they say summer 16 is when the accident happens. So Cadence in the book does not come back to the island until year 17. So in the book, there's a 2-year gap, whereas in the TV series, they're only doing a 1-year gap. The grandmother dies before summer 15, so 8 months before summer 15 is when the grandmother dies. So that was a little off-putting when I saw her, because in terms of the aunt storyline, it's really the dynamic between the grandfather and the aunts is the adult dynamic. But she ended up dying, I think, in the second episode. No family pictures or crazy parties in the book. I think the only party I can think of is like the Claremont party, but there aren't really any parties because it mostly just focuses on the teens. Like when they went on the boat party or things like that, I don't think any of that stuff was mentioned or developed in the book at all. It mostly focused on Cadence and her cousins and Gat is basically what the book was about. And Cadence is the one telling the story in the book, so she's in a lot of the scenes. A voiceover in the very first episode was actually pretty good. I thought it would have been consistent throughout the series, just because as the reader, you're reading through everything through her narration. And so I wish that kind of stayed consistent. I think that would have been a better job with the audience like understanding why certain things were happening. There's no tag game in the book, so that was interesting to see in the TV series, the tag that Gat and Cadence do. I said, however, the shut up part is in the show, and that's brought up a couple times in the book. And then I said Johnny's pretty raunchy, but he doesn't kiss guys or have an orgy in the book, so just ignore that. And the book isn't that raunchy like it is in the TV series. I think Gat and Cadence only kiss 3 times, and that's it. There's some swearing in the book, but other than that, it's not raunchy at all. I don't know if that was a creative liberty that they took, probably was, to fit in with the other teen shows by showing the romance and the relationships. I think it would have been really cool if they just stuck to the simplicity of the book, because it would have been really unique. Like I said, it could have had like a Cruel Summer vibe, and they didn't go that route, which is a bummer, because I feel like that would have been the best route to take. So Cadence initiates the kiss in the book, not Gat. So I was a little frustrated when she went bonkers on him when she said, well, you're the one who kissed me. And because I knew that she kissed him in the book, I had to think back to that scene. Oh, maybe he did initiate the kiss. But she initiates it in the book. And the first kiss is actually in the attic. It's not on the beach. So that was different as well. The dads are not present in the book. So there's that. Cadence and her mom don't even talk to her dad. In the book, Marin states she gets tired a few times. Yes, this was one of the things I was shocked about, is that Marin does say she gets tired a lot. Pretty much probably every night before like Cadence goes to bed. She says it pretty often. It's probably brought up like twice in the series, just like randomly. I wish it was kind of something that was kind of consistent, because that was consistent in the book. So when Cadence arrives to the beach in year 17, it is daytime in the book, but in the show, it's nighttime. So in the book, when Cadence arrives to the beach, it's daytime, and everyone except Johnny, Marin, and Gat are at the dock waiting for her and greets her. And I believe when reading the book, she sees the 3 of them either on the beach or in the house at Cuddle Down. Because when she goes over to the house there, which I'll probably get to that scene later, they're all at the house. They're the only ones who aren't at the dock to meet her. As far as I know, I don't remember any holidays on the island celebrated in the book. And then also the jumping off the dock in the beginning, and then they do it at the end. That's not in the book as well. The ending, actually, Gat, Cadence, and Johnny, they actually swim out into the ocean. They don't jump with Cadence. Cadence and Gat do get the final kiss on the beach, and Johnny and Marin had already started going into the water. They wait until Gat gets into the water right after he kisses Cadence, and they swim away into the ocean, and that's the last time she sees them. Penny letting everyone know not to say anything about the accident, that is all true in the TV show. That matches the book. Johnny, Marin, and Gat state they are staying in Cuddle Down this summer because of the fighting with the ants. So that happens in the book inside of Cuddle Down, I believe, but in the TV series, it's when they're outside on the daybed. I think that was a verbatim scene. Cadence knew about the letter to Raquel in the books. So that was like a shocking thing that I saw in the TV series, was that they made it seem like Cadence didn't know who Raquel was. And Raquel doesn't even show up in the books. She's just talked about in the books. And I believe that she did show up in the series, but she doesn't show up at all in the book. When Cadence comes back, I can't remember I think it might be year 15. She mentions to Johnny like kind of what happened away at school, and Johnny actually tells him about Raquel, which in the TV series he tells her, it's not mine to say. But in the book, Johnny does tell her about Raquel, and she does see the letter that he is writing to Raquel. So she is very like aware of her in the book, and I don't know if it's as big of a deal. She's just very aware of it in the book, and she doesn't seem like aware of it in the TV series. Combo on the beach with Mirren and Cadence when they have the conversation where Mirren is talking about some guy that she met, like fake boyfriend, hooking up, all that jazz. So in the book, it's just Cadence and Mirren on the beach having that conversation. The boys are out in the ocean, and when the boys come back in, they basically interrupt that conversation, and that conversation ends. Whereas in the TV show, she actually has that conversation with all four of them on the beach. So that would be the difference in the book and the TV series, which I noticed in that specific scene. Now on to my wish list items. So my wish list items, this book was published in 2014, so it was written over a decade ago. And so something that I really wish that was in the TV series was the email writing. So Cadence writes emails to Johnny, Gat, and Mirren after her accident when she gets home. And they didn't show any of that in the TV series because there is a moment in the summer of 17 where Mirren apologizes for the emails, and they go into her room and she's like, well, let me look on the computer right now and read the emails. And Cadence is just like, well, why now? Other one is shipping out items no longer wanted. I'm surprised this was also not in the TV series. So Cadence has these different items that she's gotten from different people throughout the years, and she's just like going through a whole bunch of stuff because at the beginning of the book, her dad leaves, and so her mom gets rid of things and they buy new things for the house. And so she's getting rid of things, and she ends up shipping a doll to Mirren. She ends up shipping, I can't remember if it was like a piece of clothing or something, or a scarf or a tie or something, to Johnny. And she ends up just shipping things to different people. She ends up giving a couple things to homeless people on the street. And I'm just surprised that just wasn't in the TV series. That would have been something really cool to see. Just the effect that the amnesia has on her. And oh man, that would have been great. That would have been great to see. Conversations with Grandpa and Cadence. So there's quite a few conversations between Cadence and the grandfather in the book, and I just really wish they showed more of the grandfather and the dynamic he has with the aunts as well as Cadence. I just feel like they just didn't do a good job with some of the relationships. Also, Carrie's drinking in the middle of the night. This was the scene that all I thought about was just like, oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait, because this would be a great Easter egg for the prequel. Because I remember reading this in the book and I was like, oh, is Carrie going along with Penny's thing of not even talking about or not bringing up the accident or anything? So Carrie drinks in the middle of the night. That's like one of the things that she does. I don't know if it actually showed her drinking problem that much in the TV series, but it's definitely brought up more in the prequel, because Carrie's the one who, which I'll do a video on the prequel as well, but Carrie is the one who narrates the prequel. But she has a scene in We Were Liars about being in the middle of the night. She's outside of like Cuddle Down and Claremont, I believe, and she's just like walking on a path, and I think Cadence sees her outside or like meets her outside, and she says something along the line. She asks about Johnny. She's like, oh, have you seen Johnny yet? She's like, no, I haven't seen him yet. Or Cadence says that. And so when I read that and Carrie was asking about Johnny, I was just like, oh, is she just like playing along with it? And so you learn that in the prequel, there's an opening scene, which actually shows at the end of the series. That's actually in the prequel. The opening scene is one night that Carrie goes to, I think, Cuddle Down or something to get like alcohol or something like that, and Johnny sees her in the kitchen, or Johnny and her meet in the kitchen, and it's not the first time that they see each other. They do meet. She's like, Johnny still visits me, and this particular time I visit him. I think that they're just socializing or playing a game or whatever, and Johnny asks her like, what is the what's the worst thing you ever done? And that's how the prequel started. So I think that they set up the prequel by putting, instead of doing Carrie in the drinking scene, they end up doing it at the end where when she comes back inside, he's right there. But that particular scene happens at night, not during the day. So that's basically it. They did have some scenes that were verbatim, but it was just sometimes they were nighttime when in the book it was daytime, or they had it in the daytime when actually in the book it was nighttime. So for example, the attic scene with Cadence and Gat was basically to a T of exactly what happens. Same with the dialogue. However, in the book, when Gat goes downstairs, she stays with Grandpa and they have a scene together. That's the only thing they didn't show in that. The daybed scene where they are talking about staying at Cuddle Down, that I believe was inside, which I had mentioned before, instead of outside. The scene where the younger kids ask Cadence about ghost stories and she's like, ask Mirren, that is pretty much the same thing in the book. Johnny's lines and Gat lines were pretty on point. A lot of the things that they said were directly from the novel. And then the shut up scene was actually at night in the book. I believe it was the same as the Claremont party. Yes, whereas in the TV series, it was on the daybed. But the shut up scene was pretty much verbatim as it is in the book. However, in the book, it was at night. And then when Gat got up, he actually went into the ocean to swim. And that's where Cadence went to go follow him. So they had a moment in the water in the book, whereas it was just daytime in the TV show. So there were scenes like that where the dialogue was correct, but was placed differently in the TV series, whether it was like night or day or location, like beach, inside, yada, yada, yada. I do want to talk a little bit about the actors and the characters. I think the actors for Johnny and Gat did tremendous. They were how I pictured. Mirren had an extended storyline in the TV series, and she seemed very emotional, where she's more level-headed in the book. She kind of reminds me in the book similar to the TV version of Taylor in The Summer I Turned Pretty, where Taylor's kind of the voice of reasoning for Belly. That's kind of how I looked at Mirren with Cadence. She was kind of a little bit of a voice of reason in the book. So her character was a little bit different in the TV series. And she's in the book, in my opinion, she's a good friend. I just didn't appreciate in the TV series where the four of them were constantly on each other, and there's more tender moments in the book. And so I just feel like they kind of missed on I didn't like the yelling at each other part, because they weren't like that much in the book. Even though Cadence was rude to them in the book, I just feel like it wasn't at the extreme of what it was in the TV series. I liked the actress who plays Cadence when she was in Revenge as young Amanda, but I just didn't like her as Cadence. Nothing like with her, I just don't know if she was the right fit for it. I think her voice is the thing that threw me off. It was just so like raspy and kind of deeper, and so it's just not how I pictured Cadence, which is totally fine. It's just, that was just my thoughts. Same with like Mirren. I don't know what was with the hairstyles. That is not what I pictured their hairstyles to be. And so that threw me off too. I don't know if they were wearing wigs or something, but I just don't think that was just the best look for them. I pictured them with longer hair. And then I think Carrie was casted very well, so I'm really excited about the prequel if they get picked up for a season 2. I know I probably missed a lot, but hopefully that's like a gist of some of the similarities and differences for you. I would definitely recommend reading the book because it has a different ambiance than in the TV series. It definitely gives like a little bit more of a sinister vibe, in my opinion. And you can also look for the clues. Now that you would know the ending of the book, you can kind of see the clues throughout the book to kind of see when you can put the pieces together to see how the teens end up at the end. That is it for my review. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.